Hello YouTube and welcome to Full Dottle, a channel dedicated to tamping topics such as pipes, tobacco, lore, and more. I am your host, the Bearded Briarman, and without further ado, let's get lit. Welcome back everyone, and on this episode of Full Dottle, I'm going to be doing a VR to Braun, Bros, and Briar. It is titled The Young and the Foolish. We are telling stories about our youth when we thought we were invincible, doing things that luckily didn't get us killed, but definitely were not things we should have been doing. A little disclaimer before I start this video. Nothing that I'm about to describe to you in this video is condoned by me or this channel. I do not encourage anyone to do this. Just take it for an entertainment value and nothing else. Do not try to recreate the story that I'm telling you today in any way, shape, or fashion at your own residence. This is going to be a very dangerous topic. It's not something I'm necessarily proud of, but it is a story of foolishness from my youth, and I'm going to share it with you. A little housekeeping. I am smoking my Oceano 673 KS Rusticated Savinelli, and in it I've got some Bayou Morning Flake from Cornell and Dill. It's going to be a while before I get tired of this blend. So, as I've said in other videos, I was raised in a town called Huntsville, Madison County, Arkansas. Madison County is called the crossroads of the Ozarks. We have dirt roads for days. You could probably spend your lifetime just traveling dirt roads in Madison County. Madison County is also known for its outlaws and maverick law enforcement. It's a place where you either get tough or a lot of times you get dead. Now there are a lot of stories I could go into about Madison County, and maybe I will in future videos, but for this video I'm going to tell you a story about when I was a freshman in high school. When I was younger, I experimented with substances a lot. And I have done just about everything under the sun in my lifetime. I never used intravenous drugs, so never done things like heroin or anything like that. But I've tried just about everything else. And when I was a freshman in high school, I heard about this weed that grew naturally. And the stories that I heard were that it would make you hallucinate, have a great time. So naturally, I wanted to try it for myself. Now let me just say that I wasn't one to be peer pressured into anything. The only things that I did growing up were because I wanted to do them. There were a lot of things my friends tried to get me to do that I simply wouldn't do because I didn't care what they wanted me to do. I did what I wanted to do. Well, I wanted to do this. So I found this plant that was described to me. I took it home and I prepared it and I consumed it. And after I'd consumed it, I waited a few hours. This was close to my bedtime, that way my parents wouldn't be awake. I waited a few hours and I started to get some effects from it. At first it was just a little wobbliness, made you feel almost drunk. The physical feeling was almost drunk, just off balance kind of feeling from it. But soon enough, I began to have visual hallucinations. Long story short, it was the absolute worst experience of my young life. I tried to go to bed to sleep it off, and that didn't work. I kept seeing faces. Every time I would look around the dark room, faces would come out of the darkness. Very scary, terrifying faces. I looked at my door, and my door to my bedroom, of course, you could just barely see the light flooding into the room from the kitchen light over the sink. We had a fluorescent light over the sink that remained on during the nighttime hours, and the light would slowly peek in through and around the door. Well, this light was playing tricks with my eyes. As I looked over at the door, I could see the door opening, but it wasn't opening like normal. It wasn't opening like on its hinges. It was breathing. It was bowing out and back in, out and back in, as if it were breathing. Terrified me. I tried to get up and go into the den where my dad and my mother would sit and watch television. But I could barely walk. I made it into the den, and my dad was asleep on the couch. He was facing away from the room into the couch, sleeping comfortably. It was rather late, or it might have been early morning. I really don't know what time it was, but it was deep into the night. The TV was always left on. My dad always fell asleep watching the television and slept in the den most nights because he had horrible sinus issues, and laying down flat would make his sinuses close up, and he had a difficult time breathing. So he generally slept in his recliner, but tonight for some reason he was sleeping on the love seat, had his head propped up on the arm of the love seat. As I'm sitting there watching television, laying down on the ground, I look back, checking on my father periodically, just to make sure I wasn't being watched. And he was still facing the couch. As I'm watching TV and the rainbow of colors is splashing me in the face, I look back again, and this time he's looking directly at me. I immediately turn back around to the TV, nonchalantly of course, because there's nothing that says something is up when you look at somebody and then look away really quickly. So I look away really quickly, look back at the television. I give it just a few seconds, and I look back. Once again, he's turned facing the couch. I was hallucinating that he was turning and watching me. At any rate, it frightened me. So I make my way back to my bedroom as carefully as I can without disturbing anybody, because if anybody would have woke up at this moment, they would have known that I was under the influence of something, because I was shaky. I couldn't hardly walk. I was hallucinating like crazy. I make it back to my bedroom, and I survived the night. This horrible, excruciating experience. It wasn't painful, but it was the worst hallucination experience I've ever had. And trust me, I've had more than this experience. Only the first time, though, on this. So I survived the night. I make it to school the next day. That morning I woke up, I dressed, but I was extremely weak, very shaky, and I could barely see. I wasn't completely blind, but I could only see fuzziness, no real sharp contours of any kind. Everything, it was like walking through an abstract water painting. Nothing was defined. I could make out faces. I could tell that somebody had eyes and a mouth and a nose, but I couldn't hardly tell who they were until I heard their voice, and I couldn't see objects. I couldn't tell the difference between a chair and a desk, or a rock for that matter. I had a good friend of mine guide me through the hallways, and I tried to make it at school, but I couldn't do it. After the first period of class, as I was walking through the hallway, my principal started to stare at me. And this wasn't just paranoia, like, you know, certain substances make you very paranoid. This wasn't paranoia. He was staring at me. I could tell because I was probably going like this, trying to see his face. So I decided I'm going to call my mother and tell her I don't feel well, I need to go home. And that's what I did. I called my mother. Luckily, we had a payphone in our high school outside of the office, so I went to the payphone during the space between classes. I went and called my mother, told her I wasn't feeling well, I needed to go home, and she believed me. She came and got me. I had a lot of stomach issues back then. And she came and got me and took me home. She knew something was up, and she asked me, you know, what's going on? And I just told her, I don't really want to talk about it, I just don't feel good, you know how it goes, blah, blah, blah. So she takes me home. Well, later on that day, one of her nurse friends, because she works in the healthcare field, she had one of her nurse friends come over just to visit. And it was a friend that I trusted. It was one of her friends that I trusted a great deal. I knew that I could tell her my secrets and she wouldn't disclose them to anybody. So she assures me, just tell me what's up. I'm not going to tell your mother. I'll keep it just between us. But tell me what's going on. So I told her. Well, apparently this plant, this happens quite often. The plant causes a type of poisoning, and there are a lot of people that experience this poisoning each year because of the stupidity like I was performing. And she said that you're lucky because it only takes 6 milligrams of this substance to be considered a potentially lethal dose. And I had had at least that much because when you reach that threshold, that's when it causes temporary blindness or limited vision. So she checks me out, does, you know, takes my vitals, makes sure that everything is great. I had a little tachycardia, which is increased heart rate. But for the most part, I was fine. She tells me you need to drink lots of water, you need to eat something, you need to just take the day and relax a little bit and never do this again. She said, you're lucky you're alive. This could have easily killed you. People die every year because of this plant. So that's my story. Not a very bright young man sometimes, and my experimentations got me into a lot of hairy situations. It was the first and only time that I had done this, and it nearly cost me my life. So that's my story of the young and foolish. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm not going to ask for a thumbs up on this because this is not something you thumbs up, but I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. And until next time we see each other, I bid you farewell and happy piping. Goodbye, everyone. Have you enlisted in the full Dottle platoon yet? It's easy. Just click the subscribe button. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as I upload the next episode.